Hello! This is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from the beautiful metaverse, and more specifically from beautiful Danville, Illinois, homeland of the Correllian tradition, and this is Midday with Reverend Don. And today, my guest is Krys Copeland, and we're going to be talking about what's new at Correllian Publishing. And we want to say hello to Janet Winston in the chat room. And as you know, if you follow Midday with Reverend Don, you can type your questions or comments into whatever platform you're watching on. They'll appear here in the chat room. And before I introduce Krys, I do want to say I'm having some internet issues today. And so it may be that I may drop out, and Krys will carry on without me if that happens. And hello to Antonio in the chat room.
Hi,
And hello,
Janet. Hi,
Krys.
Antonio. Hi. Good to be back. It's been a very busy week at Correllian Publishing.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, I'm very excited to announce that we are taking submissions for fiction books, and in particular pagan fantasy. So if anyone would like to make submissions for that, that's certainly something we would be interested in. And so you can send those to correllian.publishing@gmail.com if you would like something of yours published.
Yes, indeed. So how are you? How are you otherwise this week?
Otherwise, I'm also very busy with Speak Your Own Book this week, and with a lot of the projects that we have going through that. In addition, a lot of my students that I thought were going to be taking off for the summer are going to continue my classes through the
Oh,
summer.
wonderful.
Yes, so I wasn't expecting that, but it's a happy surprise anyway, so I appreciate it.
Yay. And before we get into detail, I want to take a moment to congratulate the Right Reverend Mary Malinsky and the Aquarian Tabernacle Church of Canada, who have achieved charitable institution status in Canada and are the first Wiccan church to do so. The Aquarian Tabernacle of Canada has been recognized in Canada since 1994, but charitable institution status is a special, separate recognition that has just been announced that they have achieved. So congratulations to them on that.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. It's always good to find recognition, especially in under legal circumstances. So
Yes.
we need more of that. Hopefully, that will continue to happen among our community.
Yes, indeed.
Uh,
So what have we got for today?
Well, we've been working really hard on editing your newest book, Reverend Don. I'm really excited about that because I was able to take a sneak peek at your personal numerology chart today, and that was quite interesting. I was really very fascinated by how you broke down each of the numbers and
Hmm.
how you talked about the interplay of those numbers within your own existence, like how they manifested themselves
Hmm.
in your life. Something else that was very interesting, it was the chapter on compatibility
Hmm.
charts, how to compare multiple charts to each other, and that was really fascinating. How you broke down the how that process actually works. How do you look at more than one chart at a time? So how is that? For you, how do you go about that process if you're doing like relationship charts or
Well,
business partner charts?
it's very similar to doing a comparative chart in astrology. You're comparing the different elements and how they go together. Um, and we want to say hello to Nikki in the chat room.
Hi, Nikki.
And Janet says the internet problem could have to do with solar flares that are apparently
Mm,
rampant at this moment.
yeah.
Um, but when you compare things together, I do want to say that, anyone can be compatible if they choose to be. So we're talking about what's inherently compatible. You can get along with anyone you choose to get along with. You can always find the good. So just because you might not have a compatible chart doesn't mean you can't still have a good relationship. But it does give you advice on what you have to address in that relationship. And hello to Renee in the chat room.
Hi, Renee. Good to see you.
Um, I think it's important to remember when we talk about things like comparative charts, they're there to advise us, not to rule over
Mm.
us. And hello to Martin in the chat room. It's good to see you, Martin.
Hi, Martin.
And hello to Tina in the chart room or in the chat room, who gives us greetings from Buffalo, New York. It's good to
Hi,
see you,
Tina.
Tina.
Good to see you.
Chat room, not chart room. Charts are what we're talking about. Uh, but um, but yes, when we look at our comparative charts, they do tell us where problems are likely to be. And the different numbers, just like the different signs, some of them are much more compatible with one another. And Janet says that she thinks it's likely we may be seeing the northern lights again in unusual places because of these solar flares, which certainly would be interesting. The last time, not too long ago, that was an issue. I went out and looked for them, but you couldn't see them here, even though they supposedly were able to be viewed this far south. But I guess it just wasn't the right um, the right cloud coverage.
Yeah, it's the same here in the Netherlands. During that past week, we went outside to look for it, and while it couldn't be seen in our particular area because of the light pollution, it was seen in other parts of the Netherlands. So we just couldn't see it due to light pollution in our area. It looks like Reverend Don has frozen here, so I'm hoping he will be able to reconnect, and hopefully people can still hear and see me during this. So just to kind of talk a little bit more about what Reverend Don was referring to, some of the things that I learned as I was editing that chapter today regarding the compatibility. That's quite true. I think any a number combination, any life path number combination is going to have the positives for that connection and the negatives for that connection, and there may be more negatives in some and less negatives in other connections. But there's still going to be challenges in every relationship and strengths in every relationship. And I think we have Reverend Don coming back in. Yeah, there we go. Well, maybe not. Okay, I thought he might have been able to get back in, but it looks like he's frozen again. Are you there, Reverend Don?
I think I am.
Okay, okay. Glad we got that fixed.
I don't know how much I'd bet on that being fixed for any length of time. But
Well, yeah, again another issue that we're having with the northern lights showing up in the next place. Oh, it looks like it's frozen again. Reverend Don, can you hear us? Okay, so he will try to reconnect. Hopefully that's done it.
hello.
Yay, there we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
So since I'm not sure how long I'll be here, I'm going to move on to the other subject that you had mentioned, which is looking at our names.
Yeah.
And many of us have more than one name, especially in the pagan community. Some people have craft names. Many people have variations on their name depending on what they're doing. And all of these things interject different energies depending on how you're interacting with them. I'm most commonly known as Reverend Don Lewis, which has a particular numerological meaning. But I also frequently sign my name as Donald J. Lewis. I'm sometimes called Donald Lewis, though not nearly as often. And of course, Donald Lewis High Correll, which is the most formal version of my name. And these each have their own energetic character. And depending on which one I'm acting as, it can make a difference to how I express myself. Much more so, however, if we're talking about a craft name that's very different. Let's say your name is Joe Smith, and your craft name is Mad Goat or something, which I think of from the local coffee shop. But the energy of that name is going to be very different from your everyday name, and the way that you express yourself when you're operating under that name may be affected by that. The same is true when people marry and change their names, usually, but not always, women. Men have also been known to hyphenate or otherwise change their name at marriage or at divorce. And either for anyone who's doing that, it will change the energy of the way that you're expressing yourself because it changes your numerological designation. Doesn't mean you lose the original one, but it gives you another face, for one of a better way to put it. It's been talked about by various people, and I've talked about it on occasion, that the different roles we play in life can involve different expressions of our personality. The way you behave if you're someone's employer is not going to be the same as if you're someone's employee or someone's friend or someone's romantic partner. Each of these will bring in a somewhat different character to how you're expressing yourself. And this is all expressed, it's all help. You can define this through numerology. You can see the differences very clearly by the different numerological characterizations of those different names. And I can tell you, if you're dealing with Reverend Don Lewis, I believe the number comes out to 11, which is the master psychic number, the master spiritual number, and that's very much what I tend to be that way. And if you're dealing with Donald Lewis High Corral, the number comes out a little differently. I believe it came out to a 7 for that one. And that is also a very spiritual number. But the emphasis is on spiritual understanding and teaching as opposed to psychism. And I would have to say that if you look at how I've operated under the two names, that is a difference that you will see. As a psychic, I've usually been Reverend Don Lewis, and as a spiritual writer, Donald Lewis High Corral. And although both have dealt with the other, the emphasis has tended to be on one or the other. And we want to say hello to Ivy in the chat room. I'm probably missing people coming into the chat room because I keep disappearing.
Yeah.
But we want to say hello to everyone. I'm sure Krys is doing it when I'm not here.
Mostly, I'm just trying to find out if you're frozen or not frozen, or should we wait a second? Yeah.
Right now, we seem to be okay, but this has been happening all morning, and I'm sure it's not only happening to me. And in fact, I think you had mentioned you were having some issues.
Yeah, occasionally mine will freeze up too. I think I've had to reload twice since we started our chat today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, this will be an interesting half hour. But these are some of the things you'll find in Reverend Don's Book of Numerology. And what else do we want to talk about?
Well, I also liked the chapter on how you don't just take this is your chart, this is your name, this is what it
Mhm.
means, but how do you balance the numbers in your life? How do you bring about certain types of energy? Let's say leadership energy with the number 1, or communication energy with the number 2, or creativity with the number 3. How
Mhm.
you can use numerology in magic and in spell work.
There are a lot of things that we talk about regarding that, and it's a very important point. It brings us back to what we were saying earlier, that you don't do these charts just to see what's there, but to advise you on how to capitalize on that, on how to make your strong points better, and how to work on your weak points. And numerology can be a very good way of doing that. Many people have changed their name in one way or another to change their energy, for example. We were just talking about how that works. When you start a business, when you do many forms of magic, numerology can be very important to it. And I mean, it's a lot of information to tie together in a few sentences, but there are many different ways to to strengthen the good points and to.
Oh, and I think Reverend Don is just frozen up again. But just to piggyback off of what he was talking about regarding the strengths and weaknesses, something I really enjoyed reading through today as I was editing was regarding not just how to play to your strengths, but also how to develop your weaknesses. Reverend Don actually gives practical tips for each of the numbers, and including their weaknesses, how to overcome those weaknesses. So let's say you're prone to disorganization. Let's say you have a lot of the number 5 in your chart. Then you can practice using organizational tips that are in there to help balance out that 5 energy in your life to make sure that it's focused on the activities that you would like to send that energy towards. Now, switching over from Reverend Don's book, since he is having internet trouble right now. Oh, there he goes. He's coming back. Let's see here. He should be in. He is in the studio, so I think he's checking his equipment or something. There he goes.
Oh, we're back. Yeah, it puts me in and takes.
And I believe it's happened again. So just we'll see.
That keep that too momentary disconnection. So yeah, we're having an adventure.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience. I assume you can hear me now.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Because it's not telling me you can't. So.
Yeah.
So where were we when we got cut off?
Well, we were talking about the strengths and weaknesses with different numbers, and I mentioned how with each number that you talk about, the number strengths and weaknesses, you also give these tips for how to overcome those weaknesses with each one. So that was quite interesting. Looks like Janet says the internet has been going in and out, and it's also happened over the past weekend.
We want to say hello to Lady Kai in the chat room.
Hello, Lady Kai. Good to see you.
Yeah, there are many fascinating things about numerology. I'm hesitant to try to launch into anything that's going to be a long description because it doesn't seem like I'm going to be here for very long. But there are lots of things in the book talking about these things. One of the things I do want to say is that when we talk about strong points and weak points, that's a very relative thing. What you consider what you want to build is individual. So there are things that we can talk to. Yeah, things we can talk to that are kind of general and would generally be considered the strong and weak points. Whether you actually see it that way for yourself, that's up to you. Certain numbers, for example, can be very blunt, for example. And some people consider that to be a virtue, and some people consider that to be excessive. And that's completely relative to how you feel about it. And this is true in numerology, it's true in astrology, it's true everywhere you look with character analysis and character development. In the end, who you choose to be is what's important. But this is my opinion of what are the strong and weak aspects of the numbers and how you might best take advantage of them. Your mileage might vary, and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of culture map studies. I'm not sure if you're familiar. I believe
Not really.
The name is Aaron. I'll look it up here. But culture maps basically are an analysis of different cultures around the world and how they communicate, what their communication style is, whether they're say high context or low context, whether they use a lot of body language or nonverbal cues, or whether they're very direct and to the point. And it feels like the numerology chart is a cultural map for ourselves, basically.
Yes, I am actually familiar with that. I just didn't particularly recognize the name. But if you look at different cultures, you will see that certain traits are valued very differently.
Yeah.
And
Aaron Meyer is, by the way, the name of the scientist that wrote that book. The culture map.
An example is that if you look at European versus African culture and voice level, in European culture, it's often considered proper not to speak too loudly so that you're not making your business everyone else's business. Whereas in African culture, it's considered rude to speak at too low a level because it's like you're keeping secrets. And it's just a cultural difference. But when you put the two together, sometimes it leads to misunderstanding.
It's
Uh,
very similar in comparing Dutch culture to English culture.
yes.
Here, people are very direct and to the point. You might get like two-word emails that are just a quick answer to your question, whereas in English-speaking countries, we have to start with "Hi, how have you been? How is
Yep.
the family? How are the kids?"
Very
And
different.
very different styles.
And if you look at people's homes, one of the things that I learned early in life is that for people from a more Germanic background, if someone comes into your home, they should not go any farther than they're specifically invited to come.
Yeah.
The idea of just wandering in and looking around would be considered rude. At least that's my understanding, which isn't necessarily the same in the English speaking world. And in the English speaking world, it's not uncommon, at least in the US, to give people a tour of the whole house when they're first visiting, which I don't think is necessarily what happens in the Germanic world,
Yeah,
where
not
there's
typically. Yeah,
yeah,
it we do have if it's like a house party, like a
yeah,
housewarming party, then yes, the guests are allowed to wander around, but that may be more for space reasons. We definitely had that when we moved into this place here, we had about 40 people over for a party, and there's no way we could have crammed everybody into the small Dutch living room here, which is
yes.
actually big for Dutch standards. So,
Another big difference is whether or not you offer people food.
mm,
And in some cultures, it's absolutely required to offer company refreshment, and in others, it's not so common.
yeah, that's
And the
very
numbers are
true.
the same way. Certain
Yeah.
numbers operate in certain ways and operate in your life in certain ways, and others operate very differently. And how these interplay in your numerological chart tells you where you start in life. And again, you can change that by strengthening the strong points and working with the weak points as you perceive them, and and building yourself into who you wish to be. You're not neither in numerology nor astrology nor any of these other systems are you condemned to be who you were born.
Mm,
It's there for your analysis to help you become who you choose to become.
absolutely. And I believe that Reverend Don has froze up again. Yeah, just to kind of confirm what Reverend Don said about in regards to food in cultures. In Texas, in particular, probably most of the United States, it's very typical if someone happens to show up at your house around dinner time, whether it's the neighbor's kid or an old friend, you invite them to dinner. That's just how it works. You just set an extra plate, even if you weren't planning for it. But here in the Netherlands, if you show up around dinner time unexpectedly at someone's house, they will tell you to go home. It's not because they're meaning to be rude, but it's because they only planned for a certain number of people. And oftentimes, Dutch people cook at home and they cook fresh. So they only bought enough groceries as they on their way home for the dinner for the people that they were expecting. So definitely, if you're planning on coming to the Netherlands at any point and visiting Dutch culture, then and you're invited to someone's home, make sure to only come on invitation and not just show up randomly. Looks like Reverend Don is trying to come back in. I see him in the studio here in the green room. It looks like he's reconnecting.
Yeah, I'm back.
There we go. And he has immediately frozen up again. Oh, this is kind of a difficult one.
Doesn't
Oh,
normally happen.
I think he's coming in and out here.
Yeah, I uh,
Okay, there we go.
I think I lost connection just for a second there. But
Yeah.
we only have 5 minutes left, so
Yeah.
what can I say? If you're interested in Reverend Don's Book of Numerology, you can find it at Correllianpublishing.com and many other fascinating books, including Reverend Don's Book of Astrology
Mhm.
and lots more books coming.
Yeah, we actually are releasing my book, Nature's Rational Spirit, in just a couple of days. So if you'd
Hmm.
like to pre-order that, you can go ahead and do that through our website at correllianpublishing.com. It's also available for pre-order on Amazon right now. But you will have that shipped out somewhere around the 31st or shortly thereafter. We will be getting those in.
So Um, on the premise that I'm going to be here for a couple of minutes, what else should we talk about?
Well, those were the two major things that I wanted to talk about tonight was your coming up book and this one. We are working on a book for the Wheel of the Year series for preteens.
Yes.
It will be for Lunasa, and it will include a guide for parents and kids on choosing a career or a business path to go into, and how to plan for education around that, how to have those difficult conversations early on in your kids' educational journey so that you're prepared for those and you're prepared for all the obstacles that might show up in the path of your young student as they navigate this. Renee, my book is about pagan atheism. So it's how to basically the viewpoints of a pagan atheist, and it's in particular my journey through pagan atheism. So definitely, I'm not speaking for all pagan atheists, but definitely how I've come to this path and grown into this path over the past 40 years of my life.
And
And the book
it's an interesting book because it doesn't necessarily mean what you might think it means um, from the phrase. So it'd be well worth reading to see what is actually meant and what it actually means.
Yeah, that's very true. I talk a lot about how pagan atheism seems like an oxymoron, like those two words cannot belong together. The idea of worshiping every god versus the idea of worshiping no gods, and how does that connect to each other? And yeah, it's definitely been an interesting exploration of both spirit and science. Um, and what does pagan atheism mean? So, pagan atheism is, for me anyway, it means that I follow a pagan ethical path, which means I believe that Mother Earth should have rights, that every human being should have rights, that we should work on our service to community and work on ourselves, that we should strive for self improvement. But I can think all of those things and believe all of those things without believing that the gods are real in the sense that that you and I are physically real.
Well, I think that's the important point right there. Because in my teachings, I mean, what I teach, what I believe is that, quote, the gods are as real as your interaction with them. And the universe um, is really what I tend to focus on. The gods are a way of interacting with existence, in my point of view, that can become very personal, can take on a very individual shape if that's what your interface is. Um, but I have never perceived them as being giant cartoon characters out there, for one better way to put it. Not to say that there's anything wrong with those who do, even if
Absolutely.
I
If you're
consider
going to
them
believe in
cartoon
something,
characters.
that sounds very fun to believe in. Absolutely.
But my attitude has always been that for me to recognize anything as a god, it must be greater than myself. Um, and I tend to personally come from an attitude similar to Shinto, where the idea of a kami is that which is worthy of your worship. And the term can apply to so many different things, worthy of your veneration.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I think that when you talk about pagan atheism, it's not really in the way that you're defining it terribly far removed.
Oh no, not
Um,
at all. I think they're very similar paths and similar
yeah.
viewpoints. Yeah, absolutely.
So with that, we've come to the end of our half hour. With many little interruptions, I want to thank everyone for their patience. I want to thank you for your patience. I want to thank you for joining us. And if you're interested in any of these books, you can find them at CorrellianPublishing.com. Tomorrow we have a best of Midday, where we'll be talking about dreams and dream interpretations. So I hope you'll enjoy that.
That should be a future Reverend Don's book, I think.
That might be a good book.
Yeah.
It might very well be. Um, well, I'll leave that for tomorrow, but it's a fascinating subject that everybody dreams, so everybody has an interest in it. But with that, let us close with our prayer, as we always do. And I'll wish everyone a wonderful day. I thank you for joining us, Krys, and I wish you a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you for all that you do for us in our lives every day. We thank you for the role that you play in our lives, and we know that you are always with us, and that we are always in contact.
And I believe Reverend Don has frozen up. So with that, we will finish this prayer as normal. We thank you for your presence, and stay if you will, go if you must. And as always, blessed be. And blessed be to everyone out there, and see you next time.